Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey there, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my new friend, Simone Milasas. Say hi.
Hey, Angie.
She's showing up in her beautiful polka dots and the bright red hair, and I am just already in love. I can't wait to talk. So tell us a little bit more about your business.
Well, I work with a company called Access Consciousness, and I've worked with Access using tools of Access for like the last 21 years. And basically, I came across Access at a festival, at a mind, body, and spirit festival in Sydney, Australia. And I had my own business at the time called Good Vibes for You. And I was doing, merchandise, and I had T-shirts and stickers and magnets and everything with different sayings on it that I perceived could maybe wake people up and change the world. And when I came across Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness, and listened to him speak at a seminar, I just went, oh my goodness, this is what I've been looking for. These guys have these tools and ways of creating change in the world and creating change in people and yourself that I'd never heard before, but yet seemed so familiar. So me being me, I was like, within 6 months, I found myself in Houston, Texas, going to a class there. And I was like, okay, I need more. I want more. And here I am 21 years later. And I'm facilitating a lot of the advanced classes of Access, was the worldwide coordinator of it for 18 years, took it from 4 countries to 175 countries. Like,
oh, wow.
It's been amazing. And to me, it's like, this is just the beginning.
That's incredible. I love how it just started from something that you were doing for yourself. Like you wanted to go to this festival and you just discovered something that wound up becoming 20-year plus. That's incredible.
Well, actually, Angie, the first way that this started for me too was I was living in London, being Australian, doing that London thing, living with, Kiwis, South Africans and Australians in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was 21 people, by the way, 21 people, 1 bathroom. And I never noticed that I had to wait for the bathroom. But what I did notice is I required space. So one of the things I used to do was in London, I used to get on one of those big red, double-decker buses, and I'd sit at the top in the front and with a notepad, and I would just write, like just what was going on for myself. And, I didn't have much money. So I remember at one stage I went from one end of London to the other, and I watched as we went through all these neighborhoods, and it was like, the Jewish neighborhood, the Pakistani, Indian, wealthy, poverty, Black, like all of this. And I remember looking out the window and thinking, nobody seems happy. Like it didn't matter, what religion they were, what the color of their skin was, how much money that they had or didn't have. I was like, where's the happiness? So when I was sitting on those buses, I used to write out, what could I create? What could I choose that would inspire people to choose happy? And that's how I started the business of Good Vibes for You. And because it was like this whole energy of like, what if we could exchange these good vibes with each other and these inspiration to each other? So that's where I was coming from. I was like, had this whole concept of changing the world by merchandise and maybe grabbing people by the shoulders and shaking them and saying, don't you know, there's something different, and then I met Access Consciousness and was like, damn, this is everything that I've been asking for. So, yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. I wrote down and underlined several times, choose happy, because I think that was a revelation for me, both in life and business, when I realized that was a choice, not a destination. Like, I don't know if it's blowing your mind and you're listening to this, you're welcome. But like, I remember sitting there thinking for many, many years that I will be happy when I do this, when I achieve this, when I'm recognized for this, that's when I will cross the magic finish line into happy land. And hey, guess what? When you cross the magic finish line, you're still alive and there are still things to do.
Yeah, you get to wake up happy. I mean, the two things I see a lot of people do is go, oh, when I have money, I'll be happy, when I'm successful. And also, oh, when I find the one. And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, that's not going to make you happy. If you're looking
No.
at an outside source to make you happy, whether it's a relationship, or personal money, then you'll always look at an outside source to make you happy, rather than, no, you get to wake up and be like, damn, I'm with me in this body, and how much fun can I have today? And you get to choose happy. It's just the way it
Yeah.
works.
And that's freeing in a sense to me too, because that puts happiness not always just out of reach until I get there. And then if I don't get there, or I change courses for some reason, I'm a failure and I have crapped all over my own happiness, right? I get to decide today is not a great day. It's rainy outside, but you know what brings me a little bit of joy? Snuggling up under a plush blanket next to this fake fireplace with a big mug of hot chocolate. I'm going to be happy in this moment with this tiny little thing that, hey, it doesn't cost me a whole lot of money to do all of those things. Isn't that funny that I've got a moment of joy from that?
Yeah, it's just choice.
Mm-hmm. That was just life-changing for me, especially when I remember speaking to an entrepreneur friend of mine who had always had this idea of make $1 million a year. And he was totally shocked by how disappointed he felt when he got to that. And suddenly all of his problems weren't just magically fixed. Like, I hit that $1 million goal and I still got to get up and continue and figure out what the next goal is somehow. Like,
yeah, money is not the answer. Like, I have a sort of similar story, I guess, except a little bit flipped. Is I was so in debt. Like, I created myself to be this financial mess, and I realized I was 187,000 Australian dollars in debt. And I started using some of the Access tools to change my money situation. And I remember, being in my office one day, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all my accounts and I'm looking at, my bills and everything like that. And I sat there and I went, oh, I'm out of debt. And for years I've been in debt. And then I sat there and went, I'm out of debt. And I was in my office and I went, that's it. I was like I honestly was like, why isn't there fireworks, or why isn't there this marching band that comes in and congratulates me? And, there's
right?
someone popping champagne. It was like boring.
We need more confetti from the ceiling. Why isn't there an announcement over broadcast radio? Come on.
Exactly. But Angie, I noticed that I was more comfortable being in debt. And that's something I really discovered as well is, when I was not in debt, I was like, wow, this is boring. And within 2 weeks, I found myself being back in debt. And I was smart enough to go, okay, what do I love about being in debt? And I realized I knew it. I knew that energy. I knew what it was like. I knew what it was like to, really quickly rush to make money to pay the bills or do that. I didn't know what it was like to have money. So at that moment, I went, okay, I'm going to discover what it's like to actually have money, like just receive it.
I think that's really interesting how comforting it can be to be stuck in a very negative thought pattern, negative action pattern. And I've definitely known people where that's kind of the default mode, not like they consciously choose to suffer, but they don't know that they can choose something different. And if and when they do, it's kind of like the lotto curse, right? I'm sure you've heard of that. I think we all have by this point. But, somebody gets a windfall of money and they've struggled with money all their life. And within a year or two, all that money's gone and they're in a worse position than they were before the windfall almost. So that's interesting to hear you talk about that mindset. And when, I'm bored with having money, I go back into the default mode. That's a really interesting, fascinating concept to me.
Well, I think a lot of people use no money as the source of creation. Like, if you had $1 million in the bank account every January, what would you choose? And it's like, what if we didn't use that no money as like the motivation? It's like, what if we actually had money, made it way easier, and then you choose? What is it you want to create? What is it you want to choose?
Yeah. And that was an interesting concept to me too, because I was several years into my entrepreneurship journey before I had a guy ask me a very thought-provoking question. He goes, how would you run your business differently if you had a $50,000 a month trust fund? And I realized how risk averse I was, like how I didn't want to invest money in the business because I was so scared of losing it, of becoming indebted. And that was a different energy, a different behavior from going all in on something and trusting myself to figure it out and get to where I wanted to go. Like, that was a real eye opener for me. Did you have a moment like that led to this being out of debt?
Look, I just knew that I had to start looking at it because I was avoiding it. And I had to sit down and actually have a look at what I was creating with money and what my point of view was about money. But just as you said that too, my assistant yesterday, her computer blew up and she was so stressed about it. And she pinged me and I said, hey, what if I buy you a new computer and we work something out with this? And later that afternoon, she pinged me yesterday and she said, I am so grateful. She said, you know what, in the morning, I was so stressed and I was going to the computer shop with this energy of like, oh my God, my computer's broken. What am I going to do? Like, and this more scarcity and lack mentality. And she said, when you said that you'd pay for it, she said, I noticed that I walked in and she said, and I was smiling and my shoulders were back. And I was like, I could receive anything. I could receive that the computer could be fixed or not or whatever. And she said, I want more of that. And that's one of the things I realized too, is when you actually create money, you receive money, you do have more of that. You do open up this choice, but it's not like money gives you choice. Money does give you choice, but you choosing money gives you more choice. It starts with you, and you are the one that has to start choosing what it is that you are going to have as your life. Are you going to be in debt because you know it? Are you going to have just enough money because you know it? Or are you going to start to discover what it's like to be hugely successful, like nobody, like you've never imagined before? That's your choice. And a lot of the times it takes more courage to reach into that level of, I'm going to actually, explore the success. I'm going to explore what that's like to expand everything.
I love that. I think it's a much more expansive way of thinking through things than we're used to. And I like to talk about it as often we don't even realize that we are in a certain alternate reality from everybody else that's around us. Like we all have a perception of reality that is skewed by our own particular life circumstances, our beliefs, our outcomes. And if we don't choose to see, I love this power of choice thing, because too often I hear this, well, I didn't have a choice. Wrong. I mean, you always have a choice as long as you're living. Doesn't mean all of the choices are pleasant or enjoyable, but there is always a choice. If I move into an apartment tomorrow, I can move out the day after. It's going to involve a lot of payments and probably a sore back from moving a bunch of furniture 2 days in a row. But choices that are made can be unmade. So what if you chose that despite the circumstances, despite your background, despite your money or lack of money, that this was a path for you that you want to explore, that you want to be open to? How much more empowering is that than just looking at everything around and claiming that you're a victim of your circumstances?
Yeah. I mean, I remember being told by my parents, admittedly they were both, World War II. Dad was from Lithuania, escaped during World War II, ended up being a stowaway on a boat, being landed in Australia. My mother was from Scotland, came to Australia when she was 18, one of those who paid £10 for the boat things. So the way they grew up was different. But here's the thing, is how many people start to buy their parents' point of view, and you make that your point of view, but you've got a different life, and to them, when I left school, etc., they were like, you should get a good, safe job. And I remember them saying, what's a good, safe job? And they were like, why don't you get a job in a bank or something? And I was so naughty, like so petulant. And I went, I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than get a good, safe job. And being the naughty, petulant child, but it was true. It's like for me, it's like I had the world as my oyster. I mean, the first thing I did was I traveled the world. I left, 3 months after school, and I told everyone I was going for 6 months, and I went for 3 years and just kept working and traveling around the world because I wanted to see the world. I didn't want to get a good, safe job. That was not me. So I think a lot of the times, how many people choose something based on, what somebody else is telling you it should be. Like I remember having a conversation with my stepson, and he was 14 at the time. And at school, they were saying, what do you want to do when you leave school? These are the subjects you have to pick. And he was so stressed out about it. And I said, hey, dude, you can choose these topics, right? But just know you can change your mind at any time. If you leave school and you don't want to have anything to do with this, that's okay. You go to college or university, you don't want to have anything to do with it, that's okay. Like you can always change your mind. But the mindset is not that. I remember being at school and they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to travel the world. That wasn't an answer that was acceptable, know? So it's like, but what if you stopped trying to be acceptable and started choosing what works for you?
Yeah, or there's like this subtle undercurrent or pressure to judge yourself. If you do go to school and you major in something and then you decide later on that's not for you, like there's folks out there that will tell you that why did you waste your time? I don't think any of that time was wasted. Like no time spent trying to better yourself and trying to figure out what's best for you is ever wasted, even if it winds up not being the path for you. And I just want to set that judgment on fire. If it were a physical thing, I would watch it burn with great joy.
Yeah. What if you never judged you again and you always asked, what awareness did I gain with this choice?
Yes, right. Even the hard choices that you have to make. What did I learn from this? What did I gain from this? It's
Mm,
fantastic. And I love, like, we actually have that little bit of rebellion in common. I'm sure that you couldn't tell based on the name of this show.
exactly.
I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to write things. I was always good, like writing little stories when I was younger, just being an observer of life and writing all of my family members into various little books and scripts. And I remember my parents, and they did it from a place of love and care, right? So I don't have any resentment toward that. That was their worldview. They didn't know anybody that did writing or music successfully. They were worried about my future. They knew that starving artists were a thing, people that were suffering that followed this dream and couldn't make it. What they didn't know was how fucking stubborn I am. And how I was like, all right, well, these kinds of writers tend to be broke and like struggling amongst themselves and dealing with kind of jerky people in the industry. And those writers over there are making a lot of money and they seem like they're having fun. I want to do that one. I'm going to go make money with those guys over there. So I was the first person in my family to decide that I wanted a creative career and I was going to find a way to make money to do it. And then I went and did it. And I didn't have to
Good.
have their approval. I didn't have to have their buy-in or their support on that. And I also knew that if I went and got a lawyer gig like they wanted me to be, they wanted me to become a lawyer. It's like, Dad, can you see me in pantyhose? Can you see
Yeah.
me honestly not mouthing off to a judge when they tell me like, sit
Yeah.
down, Miss Coley? And I'm like, you know where you can sit? They're like,
Yeah.
contempt. You're going to jail. That's not a good career for me.
Yeah. But Angie, the thing that I like about what you just said too is that you chose for you. Because how many, I can't tell you the amount of people I've spoken to or in classes, etc., and their families want them to choose something that they can put into a box.
Yeah.
Right. And the second that you start choosing outside of that box, it's like it makes your family uncomfortable. So then so many people, like not even cognitively, start to go, oh, hang on, that's the wrong choice. Choosing for me is the wrong choice. I should choose what works for my family so that they can compartmentalize me. And it's like, no, what if, I mean, you, me, we went, no, that's not happening. And I will admit, I did it with my hands on my hips, you know, stomping one foot for sure, you know, for quite a while. And then my brother said to me not very long ago, like my dad's passed away about 10 years ago now. And my brother said to me, you know, you're living a life that Dad would be so proud of.
Oh,
And
I love
he
that.
said, because you're choosing for you, because Dad was always like, please choose for you. He said, I'm here, I've got your back, you know, but you need to choose your life. Whereas my mother was always like, you know, I can't believe you're choosing that. That's embarrassing to me. What am I going to tell my friends? She was such a bitch. And so I had that and I had my dad. So it was like, you're like fighting like one of your parents. And yet the other one's going, hey, what works for you? Choose for you. And it was this conflict. It's like how many people, they don't want the conflict. So they just settle for what they've decided their parents want. And it's like, no, it's like, it's not too late. It's like, start choosing what it is that works for you.
It's never too late as long as you have a breath left in your body. You could start a new, that's the beauty of being alive in the time that we are. We're speaking across borders. Like, it's still just fascinating to me, the magic of the fact that you and I are sitting here face to face in different countries, in different time zones. Like, what kind of magic is this? Do you know that you don't have to buy a building to start a business anymore, guys? Like, you could just go to your local government office and say, hey, I'm starting a business, and pay them something like $30, $50 and have a business. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's a little bit harder than that, but that's what you need to do to start a business. Decide that you're starting a business, go file the paperwork, and you're in business. It's amazing.
Exactly. And you also don't need money. Like that's the one thing I see people do all the time. Oh, I need X amount of money to start a business. No, you don't. I mean, years ago it used to be, I need a business card and a website. And that was the justification. I need to do that first. No, you don't. Like you said, Angie, just start. It's like just money can come from so many places as well to support you and to create something different for you, but just start.
I love this because I feel like we're taking this concept of money and value and just like turning it on its head. And another thing that opened my eyes a while back, because I was always very money conscious, right? I grew up the eldest of three kids of a single mom. Money was always a struggle for us. And it's always been something that I was never quite convinced that I could get. And so I had that one mentor turn things on. Like if you had this trust fund, how would you operate differently? Oh, I would take wild, crazy risks. I would put myself out there. So that was a journey in itself. Another journey in itself was realizing, guys, money is made up, right? You recognize this, right? You can't go out to the backyard and like pick money off a tree. You can't eat it for sustenance or survival, right? That we as a society have agreed collectively that money is a thing that we all need, where it literally is just like bits and bytes that are floating over our heads right now in the ether. It's not even tied to real actual currency and gold standard anymore. So like if it's made up, do you think you could make more? I think so.
Mhm.
And there are
Yeah.
so many opportunities that like if you've decided that you need to go to this like traditional route that you close yourself off to. Like I love to tell people I'm an adult Disney nerd. I'm one of those annoying people. But do you know that it is somebody's full-time job to blow things up at Disney World, to just make things explode at Disney World all day, every day? That's a job. That's a thing people get paid to do. And you think that you can't go do the weird thing that you want to do and make a career out of it? No, you can totally do it.
And, one of the things I love to mention too is that money follows joy. So when you're choosing what's joyful for you, money ends up showing up. And it's not a how, it just does.
Yeah.
Like it ends up following you. When you're choosing joy and you're choosing happy, money comes.
Yeah, that's another concept that I think has been internalized, especially in capitalist society, which is that if you start a business, there's a certain amount of slog and grind and hustle and suffering to get that money to come in. We really, really resist this idea of ease, of things coming to us with ease. And I've seen so many people, especially students that I work with, like coaching clients that I work with, who think that if this comes easy to me, if this is a natural skill that I have, and if I have a lot of fun doing this, this is not something people will pay me for. So I need to focus on something else that's much harder. Have you seen that with the people that you work with?
Oh my God. Yeah. One of the tools I always talk about too is that, what are you great at? Because whatever you're great at, you usually think is useless.
Yeah.
And you think everyone can do it. And it's not true. It's like if you're great at connecting, you're great at talking to people and making phone calls, you're great at that. And it's like claim, own, and acknowledge it. Like you're brilliant at it, rather than, like you said, looking for, what you think is difficult. Like one of the things that I would look at in business is, to me, there's three energies you require. And one is creator. You've got creator, connector, and mover. And the creator is that person who has a billion ideas. If anything like me, I come out of the shower, like the big joke is everyone I work with, I go, I was just in the shower and I have a billion ideas, and then, the connector is the one who will just connect everything, is the one who will tell everyone about the product, the service, the sort of person who walks into an elevator and is like, hi, or will just talk to anyone. Right. And then the mover is the person who has the awareness of what is required to choose today in order to create that future. So they're the three energies I would look at that you require: creator, connector, mover. And then there'd be foundational, which means that you're good at all three. And a lot of times a foundational person is good at sort of having this aerial bird's eye view and then going, okay, at the moment the business needs to connect, or it needs the creator, or it needs the mover, like, having the awareness of that. And whenever I talk about this and you hear people go, like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, connecting is the coolest one, that's what I should be, that's probably the one that you're not the best at, because you're thinking that that's the best one. The one that you go, man, anyone can do that. Like creator, anyone can have ideas in the shower. No, it's not true. I remember my ex used to say to me that he thought he showered wrong, because I'd come out and be like, blah, 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 and he'd go, I just shower. And I was like, but he wasn't. He didn't have this creative capacity as I did, but he had other capacities. So don't judge yourself of what you're not great at, and start asking, okay, so if a business requires these energies, then who or what else can I add to the business, rather than looking at what you're not doing. It's like, do what you can do great, and then add something else or someone else so that you can have the ease of the business.
Oh, yeah. There's something out there that you are uniquely great at that everybody else admires you for. And in fact, that's a great place to start if you're wondering what's really special and unique about you that you can offer. There's probably already people in your life that are nudging you toward that and going, hey, you're really great at like telling stories. Have you ever thought about blah, blah, blah? Or, hey, I'm working on this resume. Can you help me with that? There are already people in your life who have noticed these talents and skills of yours and these inclinations. And when you're lighting up, and they're like, hey, you're good at that. Can you help me with that? So that's a tool to pay attention to. And I'm not necessarily saying you should start a business based on somebody going, can you help me with this? But those are signs, those are clues that might be pointing you in a good direction that could help you if you are feeling overwhelmed and unclear on a potential path.
I love
And
that.
I think that ties into joy. And one thing that I wrote down that I wanted to circle back to was this idea of avoidance and resistance, because I used to avoid feeling avoidance and resistance for the longest time and just be like, no, those are negative feelings. Those are bad feelings. Get them away from me. I just want to live in ease and joy and simplicity all the time. But I've discovered the further that I've gotten that avoidance and resistance are usually signals for me to pay attention to. Have you had a similar experience in your personal growth?
Yeah, absolutely. There's funny that you ask about that, because I ask myself questions all the time, because I think questions basically open up to something different,
Yes.
whether it's with yourself or somebody else, etc. Like an answer just goes boop and stops in the tracks. When someone goes, oh, well, it doesn't get any better than this. Okay, so you've just said it doesn't get any better than this, rather than, well, how does it get any better than this? So I think asking questions is imperative. And
Yes.
some of the questions I would ask myself at the moment is, what am I avoiding something with this choice, or what am I avoiding? And then two other ones that go with it for me is, what am I defending with this choice? Because anytime you're defending something too, you're sort of hiding from what else is possible, and like I said before, it takes a lot of courage to lean into what you have not chosen yet. And then the third question that I've played with a lot is, what am I trying to prove with this? Because I think a lot of us spend time trying to prove something rather than just be it. Like, what if you never had to prove yourself to anyone and you just be it? So, and when you're trying to avoid something, defend something, or prove something, there's this sort of clunkiness about, how you talk or how you move in the world. Whereas when you're not avoiding anything, you're willing to receive all energies, which is everything. It's like, it's from something not working out, it's like losing money. It's like, having a shitty day or any of these things, because what if you didn't judge it, but you went, well, how am I going to handle it?
Yes.
How am I going to deal with it? So you didn't avoid it. You sort of went, into it, like, head first sort of thing, going, okay, so how am I going to handle this? Maybe you stumble and fall, but you get back up and you dust your knees off and go, okay, what awareness did I gain? Let's move forward. But you're also never trying to defend yourself. You're never trying to defend your choices. You're never trying to, justify something. And then also never trying to prove, because some people don't get what it is you're choosing, and that's okay. It's like, can't please everybody. So just, you may actually end up offending people based on, you make them uncomfortable. But what if that's okay too? Like there was, what's that woman's name? Brene Brown. And there's one of her shows she mentions, which I love, that, when you're on stage, you're going to be judged. Yeah. And I've had so much judgment, vilification, everything. And I remember the first time I got really harshly vilified by media, I was in Italy and I was like, woke up and I was like, oh my God. And I was a mess for like 30 minutes. And then I went, hang on a second. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it was for the second I wrote called Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. And some guy had written that it was like this, snake oil. Like I was trying to, convince people of something that wasn't real. And what ended up, we found out later, was he hadn't even read the book. But what he started and the way it was, media, as media did, just picked up on it and went with it. And then my PR agent said, hey, there's a lot of people who want to do interviews. And I said, I'll do it. And she said, they're going to vilify you. And I said, I don't care. Yeah. I know what I'm choosing. I know what I'm talking about. I know this works. And she was like, you're amazing. And it's like the people who hear it will hear it and the people who don't won't. So don't stop yourself from anyone. Yeah.
Right. And why would you try to convince somebody that you've got something worth listening to that could really help them if they've decided from the outset without reading the book Oh my
I
gosh.
know.
That this doesn't work. This is snake oil. Oh my gosh. That's like
Yeah.
standing outside a 5-star restaurant, a Michelin starred restaurant, and like smelling the smells on the air and deciding that this place doesn't deserve the Michelin star. I haven't even been in, haven't spoken to the chef, haven't even put a fork in my
Yeah.
mouth of food, but that place is not worth your money. I know what I'm talking about. What? What?
I know.
Oh my
Good analogy, Angie. Yeah.
God. The audacity of some people that just want to spout off at the mouth and have something to say and look, that's right. And if it's in integrity with you, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Like you knew the purpose. You knew why you did that. You knew who you wanted to help and who this book was for. So everybody else, okay, cool. This is not your cup of tea. There's probably something else out there that can help you, or you've chosen to suffer and don't see any opportunities. And I can't really help you with that because I can't live your life for you. I can only show you what I've learned. And if you're ready for that, great. Like choosing to take that stance is so empowering, and it actually lets you have a little bit of fun with those guys. Like I love the fact that after this, the PR agent's trying to warn you that this is going to be a firestorm, and you're like, bring it on. I like fire.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have
man.
you not seen the fire pose that I am? Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, everything that I have is red, including my hair, all my website colors. So, like, I used to be a firefighter. I was a shitty firefighter for a couple of years. Another impulsive thing that I did just because people said I couldn't.
I love it. How can you be a shitty firefighter? What did you do? Let fires just...
Well, for one, I was actually, I discovered I had claustrophobia because of that training. So when I put a face mask on and it covers my entire face, panic, straight up panic. Like I worked extra hard to be able to compose myself in those situations and not straight up panic. One thing I'm really good at, cutting open cars with hydraulic equipment. So like if you let me destroy things with hydraulic tools all day, that's my happy place. But I was not a good search and rescue person. And it was also like, I went into it for let's see what this thing works like, what the inner workings of a department are, what going on calls is like. And then once I learned everything that I wanted to learn, I was kind of like, cool, what's next?
I'm done.
So yeah, like there are other folks that are like, they love that joy of helping people. Not to say that I didn't love helping people, I did, but like they're career lifers, they're heroes, they're really fascinated with this stuff. And I was like, I'm in it for a season and now I'm done.
Yeah, I've done so many different things. And I remember going for an interview at one stage and the guy looks at me and he goes, you do realize that your resume doesn't look that good. And I was like, what do you mean? And he went, look how many jobs you've done. And and I was like, yeah, but I was done. I was like, I did something and I was like, I'm bored now. Okay, I'm out of here. And I'm grateful that I chose that and my resume looked like shit because I was just like, well, I'm choosing what works for me.
Oh, I'm so sick of that conversation. I really want it to die in a fire. We're just going to keep going back to fire. That like your resume doesn't look great because you tried out different things. Heaven forbid we try out different things to see what we like versus having things figured out the moment we're born. Like what? What kind of impossible standards are we setting for people that you have it somehow figured out magically when you're a teenager? Oh.
Hey, I'm in my early 50s. Maybe I still haven't worked out what I want to do when I grow up,
Right? Right? And the world is moving away from resumes, guys. And you can be super creative with your resumes too. Like I got my first writing job, not because I already had a job with experience, which tell me how that logic makes sense. But by telling people, I want this writing job because look at all of the writing things that I've done over the past. I sold credit cards at Home Depot, so I know how to construct a sales argument and tell a really good story. I worked as a bartender in this restaurant, so I know how to write a sandwich board and a menu in a way that appeals to guests. Like I glommed on to every tiny bit of writing experience that I had ever cobbled together in my life and made that the star of my resume. And they went, wait, you were a bartender and a firefighter and you sold credit card. How does this connect to being a writer? I'm like, well, as you can see, I found a way to write in every job I've ever had. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Basically talked my way into it. I didn't have any qualifications other than what I decided I needed to be qualified for. And that worked. And I was able to leverage it and leverage it and leverage it and get more and more skills and get toward where I wanted just through sheer what some people like to call stubbornness, but I like to call determination.
I like that. Yes. And talking to where people can hear. You gave them what they wanted to hear.
Yeah, I just show that I feel like so much of life is just being good at relationships and good at solving problems. And if you can develop those skills, because they are skills, right? Some people are naturally better at them than others, but they're skills that can be developed. But if you can figure both of those things out, you can figure out just about anything on this earth. I love it. I love it. So this has been fascinating. I love it. I feel like I could talk to you all day. In the meantime, tell us more about these books and where we can find out how to work with you. Give it to me.
So you can Google my name. It's brilliant because I've never met another Simone Milasas. So I have a good name for Google. So it's SimoneMilasas.com. Milasas is the last name. And I have 3 books, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, Joy of Business, and also The Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One, which I wrote with my ex. I am working on some more books, and I have a lot of classes, a lot of online classes, live classes, etc. But you can find out more at my website, or also accessconsciousness.com. If you want to find out more about the tools of Access, it's like, go there. There's like thousands of facilitators all around the world. So yeah, choose what works for you.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure they have clickable notes in the clickable links in all of the show notes. They'll be able to go check you out. I hope they do, because this has been so wonderful. It's the end of my recording day, and I'm so glad that this is the one that I end on. It feels like such a chef's kiss, high note. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angie. And thank you so much for having me on here too. I really appreciate it.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.